Today I want to talk about subrealities. And what I mean by subreality is all the different types of experiences that you can have within the absolute reality. And we tend to think of there as just being really a few subsets of reality. There's like just a couple ways you can experience reality. And some are more real than others, and some are very real, as people tend to think. But I want to make the case that really these realities aren't really much more real than the others, and all have something to be appreciated about them. And the first one is natural reality. And that's what we tend to think of as being the absolute reality. Like it's the stuff that exists or outside of us. It's our body. It's me having a body. It's me having a brain and perceiving other things. It's me surviving, and it's other people surviving, and it's other organisms surviving, and it's other objects existing. That's what we tend to think of as being the absolute reality. It's when you strip everything away, it's stuff exists. That's natural reality. And it's very easy to conflate this with being the absolute reality. And really, this isn't the absolute reality, because if you took away a perceiver to perceive all of this, it really wouldn't exist. And I suppose if you do have the opinion that a tree makes a sound if it falls around nobody, then you might think that natural reality is the absolute reality. But I'm not convinced that a sound can exist without a perceiver. If there was a universe with stuff, but nobody to look at it, or nobody to sense it in any way, I don't see how that exists. Like, that exists in no way to me. There's nobody to have an experience of it, so I don't see how it could exist. And I don't know, maybe that's just my limited perspective not understanding it, but I'm convinced that natural reality can't exist without a perceiver. And when we go on to the next sub-level, which is social reality, that for sure can't exist without a mind. Social reality is a social construct, and what social reality is it's our concern for others, it's our love for others, it's our hate for others, it's our concern for others' opinions, and it's societal rules and customs. And if you take away our interactions with each other, this layer of reality doesn't exist. And like it exists while it's happening, but I mean, really, that's how all the realities work. They exist while they're happening, but they don't exist absolutely. And it's easy to conflate this one with absolute reality as well, because people are very important to us. We're social creatures. And when you're a kid, if you're below 12 years old, before that age, you wouldn't have considered society to be a social construct. I mean, that is what society is. It is a social construct. I do question how much most people have an understanding of that. Maybe it's less than I think. But yeah, as a kid, or if you're underdeveloped, it's especially easy to conflate the combination of natural reality and social reality as being the absolute reality. And it does make sense to a degree, because it's what you experience. But really, it doesn't exist without a perceiver, or it happening presently. The next sub-reality is virtual reality. And what I mean by this isn't full dive VR or advanced video games. What I mean by this is non-personal transfer of information. And this can create very in-depth psychological experiences, and really a lot of people are living their lives in virtual reality now. A lot of social activity takes place on social media. You're watching a video right now, and you experience a lot on the internet, and aside from the internet, you think about books. I include books in this category, and other fictional worlds. These are someone putting an idea in your head and you experiencing this without without the worry of what they think of you, and you having the social construct applied to it. I mean, there is some of that. You do think about the person behind it, but it's a lot less direct. So I think there's a lot of potential in this sub-reality, and it is being made use of right now. But what I don't understand is the demonization of this reality and people belittling it and saying, go outside and talk to people, go touch grass, go take a walk. And those things are great. Natural reality and social reality can be great experiences. But I don't see the point of demonizing virtual reality and trying to belittle it just because there is an aspect to it is less permanent. Like it is more of an extrapolation compared to natural or social reality, but it still does exist, and a lot of valuable experiences take place in it, and I don't see the need to demonize it. And I really think everything will balance out. Like, if you need to have certain survival experiences within natural reality to have the experiences in virtual reality, and if you're not having enough experience in social reality, you'll have to go back there and have social experiences. So I really just think it all will balance out. So like I said, I don't see a need to demonize it. I'm kind of repeating myself. But those are the sub-realities that most people experience. And most people experience those realities pretty in depth. Unless you're a hermit in the woods and don't consume much media, then you won't have much of virtual reality. But then there's the ones after I consider to be a bit more advanced. They're for advanced users, those who have developer options on, as I like to think of it. And the first one I think of as being imaginative reality. And everyone does experience imaginative reality to a degree. Really what I'm talking about here is a certain reflective nature on it. And you experience this reality in its fullest when you actually reflect on it. And you don't get this when you're a kid, when you're running around making up things with your friends. You don't, because you're not reflecting on it. In the sense, I mean, you do know it's fake, but you're really not examining it to the fullest degree you can. And in this category, I agree. I include thoughts as well as your internal monologue, which is your voice in your head, you talking to yourself and processing your memories. And then your ego, which is your personal identity. And then I also consider non-personal egos, such as tulpas, which are the imaginary friends people on the internet are starting to create. And some of these, and tulpas can be very advanced, to the point where people tend to think that they're sentient, and I question sometimes if they're sentient as well, which I do think they are, as sentient as your ego is, I guess. And then there's servitors, which are part of the occult and are really less of an identity and are more of just a mental process. And then there's other thought forms as well, other types of identity you can create, and other mental processes, whatever those may be. I consider this to be a part of imaginative reality. I should really call it like reflective reality. I think that would be a better term. When you create a tulpa, you get an experience of how an ego is created. You really get to see that process in a way that most people don't. You don't get to see your ego being created unless you deconstruct it and then recreate it again. But really, this is an axis of reality which is really underutilized and has a lot of potential in. And I think some really great experiences could come out of this. Now, the next sub-reality is dreaming reality, and this includes REM dreams, as well as lucid dreams, which are dreams you're conscious in, and then hypnagogia, which is like visions you have before you fall asleep. You know when you're falling asleep and you feel like you're falling or you've tripped, that's a hypnagogic jerk. That's hypnagogia. And then there's also certain psychedelic experiences which are very hallucinatory and kind of extrapolative. I would consider a part of this category, as well as out of body experiences where like people claim they've left their bodies. I would consider to be part of this category. And there's a lot of potential in this sub reality. And people tend to think of this as being especially fake because of how impermanent it is. Because you just have a dream and it takes place in your brain, and then you wake up and all of it's gone. But if you think about it, natural reality and social reality aren't permanent either. And in the grand scheme of things, they're not really much more permanent. I mean, you will die, and everyone you know will die, so social reality isn't going to last very long. Our society might last a bit longer, but eventually societies collapse, governments collapse, the human race will eventually go extinct, the earth will eventually be destroyed, and the universe will probably implode in some way, either via heat death or maybe a big crunch. I like that theory, the big crunch. I like that theory. But yeah, social reality and physical reality aren't really much more permanent. So I don't see the need to demonize, or dreaming reality isn't demonized, but it's sort of belittled in a sense, and it's really overlooked. And I think some of the most beautiful experiences can happen in dreaming reality. Certainly, my best experiences in life, or my highest peaks, have been in dreaming reality. And I think if you go into it, you'll probably consider those some of your greatest experiences. And the next sub-reality is absence reality. And this can be experienced through deep meditation, where you're having very little thoughts and your sense of self is reduced, as well as sensory deprivation, where you're feeling very little, and also the void, which is where if you're in a dream or a lucid dream, where you're just in nothingness. You don't even have a body. And this experience is so freaky because it's just like your perception itself. Like, the first time I was in the void, I was actually a little bit scared because I just felt like I left everything. So I was a bit freaked out. And then there's also certain psychedelic experiences, like with 5-MeO DMT, where like your ego is just completely reduced and you have no sense of self. That I consider to be part of absence reality. And I haven't experienced these very in depth yet, so I don't really know exactly how deep it goes. Although I imagine it might go deeper than dreaming reality or imaginative reality. But I'm not super advanced with meditation yet. I've only had sensory deprivation a few times. I've been to the void like, I don't know, twice. But I think there's a lot of potential here. I guess you could, I don't know, maybe absence of reality is the absolute reality. I don't know, because that would be everything stripped away. But I'm not so certain it is. Then the next reality, which really isn't a sub-reality, it's absolute reality. It's what remains, which could be absence, or it could be the combination of all the realities, which I'm not sure how you would combine natural reality, social reality, virtual reality, imaginative reality, dreaming reality, all of that with absence reality, because absence is the rest of those gone. So I'm not sure how that would work, but I think it's a possibility. One that I don't understand, but certainly a possibility. I also think It could just be a recognition of all those being one, or it could be something completely different, something I can't even understand when I'm in natural reality. Um, it could be perception itself, because I don't think any of these realities exist without them being perceived. And then you also have to get into dualism versus non-dualism. And when you think about Platonism and Platonic forms, you have the infinite, eternal, perfect forms that exist, and then their imperfect reflections of those forms. With non-dualism, which considers the form, the infinite form as being one with the finite form, like that is, it does kind of become dualistic. So I think I'm kind of struggling here to explain my thoughts on this, so excuse me. But I kind of think Platonism and non-dualism are both dualistic and non-dualistic at the same time. And I guess which one is able to recognize that more, I would consider to be the more well-rounded perspective. I think non-dualists tend to understand this a bit more and might have a bit more of a nuanced take on it, but obviously not all non-dualists would. So yeah, I think all of these realities, like I said, are a reflection of the absolute in some way. Because I do think there is just one reality. And also, you can really change up these in any order. Like, I kind of explained it in one way, like in a hierarchical way, to, just to think of it easier. Because, like, social reality does seem to exist upon natural reality, and dreams seem to take place in natural reality. So I kind of ordered it in a hierarchical sense. You could really split these up in different ways, and it all is just kind of artificial differences. But yeah, I hope you explore some of these realities. I think they're pretty cool. I certainly have a lot more to explore myself, and a lot more epistemology to do and questions to ask. So I would like to hear your thoughts as well, and that's it.